On today's show, we're joined by the president of hockey operations and general manager of your Ottawa Senators, Steve Staios.
Steve reflects on his first year with the Ottawa Senators, all the offseason moves he made, and more.
What timing after an emotional win last night against the Montreal Canadiens. We'll get into that and more on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. You can find us free and available everywhere you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Today is Wednesday, October 2nd, and Pilsy, we have confirmed that Thomas Chabot, Tim Stützle, and Brady Tkachuk are all right after a gong show 4-3 win in Montreal.
Yeah, that honestly might be the best news of the day, Ross, apart from us getting the GM and president of hockey operations on the show, which was awesome. Can't wait for you guys to watch that interview. But, oh my God, I did not know the preseason could hold a game like that. We saw pieces of that with Toronto and Montreal earlier, but this kind of all boiled over. And it all started, Ross, on yesterday's show. We said we'd like Ridley Gregg to lean into that disturber a little bit more, maybe get a little greasier with it. I mean, we did not anticipate this is what was going to happen the very next game.
And only one of the Rat Pack was in the lineup because David Perron was a late scratch. Nick Cousins didn't play, but Ridley Gregg in the first period, a little late for sure. It was a 2-minute interference penalty. Kirby Dach makes a play to the boards, and as he's kind of admiring his pass a bit, bang, Ridley comes from the other side and gets him right shoulder to chest, no head contact. Now the angle doesn't show the reverse where the left hand might have come over. It was a bit, honestly, like the Sam Bennett hit on Brad Marchand in the playoffs, but you couldn't see the follow through of the punch like you did with Sam Bennett, which makes it, to me, a minor. I was a bit upset when it was initially called a major, but
well, that's what they do.
Right? That way they can review it. So yes, that one stands as a 2-minute penalty. Then
which is the right call.
Michael Pezzetta just takes it on himself to chase Ridley around the rink the next shift. He doesn't want to go, and then all heck boils over after the first period. The benches, they start jawing at each other. Jan Yannick's ready to go. Zach McEwen standing up for himself as well. And it all led to the second period where Arbor Jackeye, shocker, always in the middle of it, just coming off a fine in his last game for pounding the back of a defenseless player's head. Yep. Then he goes headhunting once again, catching Tim Stützle high. I don't have time for Habs fans that are saying his stick got him. Yeah, his stick cut his nose, but the chicken wing follow through, like, you cannot be delusional enough to not think that he was targeting and attacking his opponent's head. Oh yeah, and he also dished the puck off 2 seconds earlier as well.
Yeah. All of the questionable hits were late. The Ridley Gregg's hit on Kirby Dach was late. Interference call. Right call. Strubal's hit on Gregg later was a little bit late. I actually thought that was probably the cleanest hit of all of them.
He didn't get a penalty for it.
Exactly. But like you mentioned, it's not done there. Arbor Jackeye said clearly the message was revenge, right? You got our best player dressed that night, Kirby Dach, arguably their best dressed player. So we're coming for Timmy. Okay, that's how you want to do it. And yeah, the Habs fans are going nuts about this whole, well, his stick is what hit him in the head. Yeah, because Arbor Jackeye went headhunting and Timmy was probably trying to defend himself just instinctively. And then that's where he makes contact. He's clear. He got the chicken wing going. It's hilarious that Habs fans are using that as a defense because Arbor Jackeye is a headhunter and he missed on that one. So I don't know why they think that's okay. Because if he didn't miss, it'd be a whole lot worse.
It would have, if he didn't miss, it was Greiba on Lars Eller. It was that much of a ferocious, what could have been a collision.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously Brady Tkachuk's going to have something to do with that, especially in the immediate impact. It was a crazy look immediately, and he goes after Jack Guy. Jack Guy doesn't even take off his gloves. He just, I don't know
That's a trend. He did that when he was pounding the Leafs player in the back of the head too.
Yeah, it's for a guy that touts himself as one of the elite enforcers of the league. Like you should be more than confident to throw down. And he knows Brady's coming after him. There's no question about it. He knows it.
Well, how about he gets tossed from the game and he gives the officials a clap on his way up with his gloves on as well, by the way. Where does he get this cockiness from? Like, he was in the minors last year. He got sent down because he was such a redundant piece where he's hurting the team more than helping. There's a fine line. These guys have to play on the line. There's no question. And do they go over it sometimes? Sure.
Yeah.
But then they give up 3 power play goals on his major penalty. They go from up 2-0 to down 3-2. So yeah, a little clap back, as the kids would say.
Now, obviously, Habs fans are going to be like, "Oh, wow, it's a preseason game. We don't care." Cool, that's fine if you want that to be your narrative. But the story
he did that against the Sens last year. Dumb penalty. They make him pay on the power play.
Yeah, and it's obviously a pattern that's happening here. So if you think it's only going to happen in the preseason, I got news for you. It's probably going to happen in the regular season. You're not going to want that happening in games that actually matter. But it doesn't end there, which is the crazy thing, because Doc has been absent from the game for most of this time. I forget exactly when he came back.
Start of the second period. So he missed the first 10 minutes. He was probably still getting up off the ice. He was down there for a little while. It looked like a scary collision. Both of them did. Like the way they were both midair, open ice, no boards. Like at least Gallagher had the boards when Timmy ran him into the boards, which kind of got everything going early on. But Kirby Dach gets back in the second, and he scores a goal off a skate. Tough play by the defenseman, Matthew Highmore. So not even a defenseman, but he was the last man back. That was a comedy of errors. Thomas Chabot pinched way too far down. That was a bad goal to give up for the Ottawa Senators. Doc gets credit for that. And then in the third period, now he's going to be a tough guy against a guy who's been out there for 90 seconds. How perfect was the TSN, how they had that little stat card up when the fight started?
Yeah, it's nice to have that there so it's very clear. But the issue is the Habs team feels like they need to get revenge for Kirby Dach. The Jack Guy thing happens. Struble hits Ridley Gregg. So the team is now like, okay, we've got our eye for an eye here. But Kirby Dach is like, no. I've had so many injuries in my career. I'm still pissed off about that Ridley Gregg thing, which is fine. It's an emotional game. I get that he would still be upset. So he wants a piece of Ridley. But the issue is, and I think all fans can agree, the best way to settle if you have an issue, throw down the gloves, fight, call it a day. That's what hockey is all about. Not to go cheap shotting after each other's stars in the goddamn preseason. No one wants that. It's not good for anyone. But the issue is Kirby Dach decides to be a tough guy at a very advantageous moment for him. Ridley Gregg, as the TSN shift timing graphic says, 1.5 minutes. So he is gassed. And Kirby Dach flies off the bench to go see him. So you're getting a tired guy, and the size difference, Kirby Dach is like 4 inches and 40 pounds on him. And then obviously like that is a mismatch, but you got to give stick taps to Ridley Gregg. He hung in there, and not only hung in there, he landed a couple honestly, Ridley Gregg probably landed the better punches of that fight. The amount of haymakers that Kirby Dach missed.
Ridley was floating like a butterfly. Eh? He was giving it the old box.
Stinging like a bee, too. You saw Kirby Dach didn't leave that fight unscathed.
No, hero move, too, as Doc went off. I kind of like it. It's a bit of a National League move, but the word is that there were Sens fans beside the bench that were chirping him going down the tunnel, and he pointed at the guy's girlfriend and said, "Call me."
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's that great. But that's how this all kind of unfolds. And I don't know if either team feels like they've settled it enough. And I think after the fact is interesting too. You get to hear what the players think after. Ridley even admitted, look, that hit was a little bit late, and I got to be careful with those. And obviously Habs fans go nuts over that. But that's the difference. Ridley Gregg is able to be like, okay, that's my bad. Whereas Arbor Jack Guy, that is not even a consideration. And even his coach, Martin St. Louis, says after the game, I thought that was a hockey play. It just looks bad when you watch the replay. I don't know what he's talking about there. But never a dull moment between Senators and Habs games.
There certainly isn't. We should actually get a little bit into the game itself.
There was a puck going around the ice too, actually. Yeah.
The only note I want to make is, boy, is it nice having Linus Ullmark in net. How about that glove save on Jake Evans in tight with just a minute to go and the goalie pulled in the 1-goal game?
Oh, it was incredible. But Ross, that can't be the only point you got to make. Carter Yakemchuk.
Ooh.
I mean,
well, we'll get into it with Staios.
Yeah, you're going to hear it, but this guy is making it so difficult on the Sens to decide what to do, Ross. I can't look. I'm even coming off my own stance here about it being the right thing to send him down because he is just looking so good every game and he looks better and better. That play on the power play, Batherson tees him up perfectly. That was an absolute missile. Like if the Sens could have a defenseman that can shoot like that on their second power play unit, that would be an absolute game changer. They were hoping that would be the case with Chychrun. Didn't work out enough.
It's also a righty.
And a righty helps out a lot. And I think even the clips where you could say maybe weren't great for Yakemchuk, like that first goal, Habs fans are parading it around looking at that replay. Well, if you actually understand hockey and you wind it back, there was a lot of things that happened that lead him to do that. A ref gets in the way. Linus Ullmark tries to play the puck a little aggressively, and that messes the whole play up, and he didn't really have a choice. So if that's what the only glaring negative of Yakemchuk's game is going to be, but then we can look at all these positives, that's fine by me for a young defenseman.
Well, I saw a couple Habs fans as well making fun of the first assist, but that was a textbook pass off the pads. Like that, he was shooting to get that rebound to the guy who ends up putting the puck.
What do you mean they're making fun of that?
They're saying that it was just an act, like it was just a rebound. And he was shooting to score. That was a shoot for a pass.
Yeah, that was so clearly what that was. Yeah, and it worked perfectly.
It was perfect. And this guy is making the decision tougher and tougher by the day for sending him back to the Calgary Hitmen. Now, if Habs fans are still hate watching this, obviously I'm joking on Twitter. Bonjour. On te voit sur le 12e d'octobre à Centre Bell. Do you know what that means?
We'll see you October 12th at the Bell Center.
Yes.
Grade 9 French coming in handy.
C'est bon. So with that said, it to me was a joke, but they're taking it very seriously when I said, how do you pass on Carter Yakemchuk at 5th overall? Question. I didn't notice Ivan Demidov once last night. Now, all that to say, Sens win 4-3, and the emotions were high, but as you'll hear from Steve Staios, why he thinks that. We start the interview with that. We get into a bit of his career, kind of what his philosophy was like as a player and how that led him to the road he's taken to get to where he is now as president of hockey ops, general manager of the Ottawa Senators. It was a pleasure to chat with him. He's calm. He's thoughtful, doesn't duck any questions, and we got him to laugh too. So I think that this was a success all around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime we get the opportunity to talk to any of the executives in the Ottawa Senators organization, it's a real treat. And we really appreciate Ian Mendez hooking that up for us.
Love it. So without further ado, and if you want to say more about the game last night, Pilsy, we'll do that in your final thoughts on the other side. But next, it is the head honcho of the Senators management team. Here is Steve Staios.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Hey, if you guys want to get tickets to the next Habs Senators game, whether it's preseason or regular season, you can find it on Game Time, the official ticketing app of the Locked On Podcast Network. And they got a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you're not wasting time searching through thousands of tickets. Nothing worse, too, than when you think you're getting a good deal and then you make it to checkout and there's all these surprising fees. Turn on the all-in pricing feature on the app and you're going to see what the price is right off the hop, so you're not shocked at the end. Seat views, you can make sure you got a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
It's also time to stock up your freezer with premium meat and seafood. You can do that with Farm to Fork. Today's episode is brought to you by Farm to Fork. You can go to farmtoforkdelivery.ca and use promo code LOSP for 10% off your first purchase. Now, why Farm to Fork? Well, it's premium meat and seafood that has been hand cut at the butcher's table before being vacuum sealed individual packages to make it so you can just pull out what you need any given day. They're raised antibiotic and hormone free, all natural, and they're ethically raised. I meant to say antibiotic free. They're ethically raised. Of course, they're also available for free and convenient delivery. So save money on gas, save time, especially winter's coming. So you do not want to have to be like, oh man, we've got all these veggies, everything to use, but we don't have a protein to round out the meal. Now you don't have to worry with Farm to Fork. You can also do the delivery, but you can also, Pilsy, go check out their store for a lot of great deals.
Yeah, we're going to check out the store when we're in Ottawa. Stoked for that.
Oh, so you can go check that. Where is it? 1570 Carling Avenue, Unit A. It's right between the Diamond Storage and the Corral building. So we'll let you know when we're going to be there, probably Friday morning, but stay tuned for more details and you can come see us, have a bite, and maybe go check out all that great product that they have at Farm to Fork. So check them out today. You will never go back to grocery store meats once you have Farm to Fork. That's Farm 2, the number 2, farm2forkdelivery.ca. Taste the Farm to Fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. All right, here he is, Steve Staios. All right, we now welcome a very, very, very special guest. This former second-round pick carved out an NHL career that saw him play over 1,000 games with 6 different franchises. Now he's president of hockey operations and general manager of your Ottawa Senators. Steve Staios, welcome to Locked On Sens. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. I mean, I'm still coming down from last night's emotional win in Montreal. How did that unfold in your eyes?
Well, emotional is right. I think, I think all of our games against in the division tend to get heated, but it's preseason and lots of players trying to make an impact and make the team or move up the lineup. So, you want to be in there and compete and do well, but at the same time, you want to make sure you get out unscathed. So it was good. I mean, listen, things are starting to ramp up. The rosters are getting a little bit closer to what they'll be like on opening night. And it was a spirited affair.
Yeah, definitely a spirited affair, and we hope everyone's okay after that one. But last week was your 1-year anniversary since you joined the Ottawa Senators. There's been a lot of movement this offseason. Steve, do you feel like you've been able to really put your stamp on this team at this point?
We've done a lot. I mean, we've changed a lot of components to this group, and strategically we went through the off season. I mean, it started at the deadline where we were looking at really evaluating our group to its core and looking at different options that we could do to improve the team. And the trade deadline didn't provide any opportunities for us, but we were able to sort of kind of piggyback off that and add where we thought was most needed. So we're detailed in our approach, and we're pleased with what we did in the off season, and it'll all start to come together now, and as we watch our team start to compete. But no, it's my personality. I mean, it was an evaluation on our group at the time last year and where we felt like we needed to get better, and starting in goal and then moving up to rounding out the roster with some veteran players.
And I felt like last year you were asked about it over and over again. We know November didn't go the way anybody would have liked. And from that point on, it's like, okay, what changes are going to be made? And it felt like you were very steady, but reserved in how you felt the team needed to be addressed. But internally, how long did it take you watching that group to know where you wanted to fix?
Yeah, I mean, it became clearer as the season went on. I don't think there's an actual time, Ross. Like kind of midway through the season, you feel like you know what your team's all about. Now, it was challenging in a number of ways. I mean, to properly evaluate and give the team a full, we weren't healthy for a lot of it, and so that sort of factored in as well. but as the year goes on, they get into these situations. The team gets into situations. You see where you maybe need some more help. I mean, obviously, and it wasn't just on the goaltenders, but we wanted to improve in that area. A lot of it was the play in front of us. I think we've gotten some players here who can kill penalties for us, take pride in killing penalties, and we want to get better in that area as well.
So before we move on, we got a few more questions about the current roster. We always like rewinding the clock, whether it's, coming up through falling in love with hockey. But for you, my big question is, we know a lot of guys, they go from being players to management, whatever the case is, the next level outside of hockey. But when you were playing, were you one of those guys who was dialed in into everything happening in the league? Or did that kind of evolve over time where you knew that this is what you wanted to do one day?
Yeah, as a player, I really didn't think too much about what I was doing, what I was going to get into post-playing career. Obviously, always passionate about the game, and I did follow the league. I watched a lot of hockey, and I looked at what other teams did, but I don't think, I had to stay focused on playing. I was, the way I came into the league was by being in the minors for 2.5 years. And once I got there, I didn't want to let go of it. And so I had to stay focused. And even as I established myself as an everyday NHL player, it was always in the back of my mind that I had to perform or else I wasn't going to be in the lineup. So I stayed pretty focused on the task at hand at the time. But I think I was fortunate enough to play a long time and with a number of different organizations, and you start to look at it at a different lens when you turn 35, 36, 37 and still playing. So I knew I wanted to stay in the game, and, it's been quite a journey post playing career. I got to work at the Toronto Maple Leafs organization for a few years, and then, ran the team in Hamilton in the CHL and the OHL. And I think that was really, and speaking even with Kelly McCrimmon about it, when you're running a team in junior, you really have to do everything. And it was probably the best thing for me as a manager to help understand the game at all areas and every area of the organization.
Now, you obviously had a long career playing in the NHL. You get that beautiful milestone of over 1,000 games. When you're creeping up in the high 900s, how important was that for you to hit that 1,000 mark?
I'd never been one on individual, milestones. The story goes, it was mid-August of that summer of 2011, and I was a free agent, and I had a couple of two-way offers, and it wasn't like the ego took over and said I didn't want to play in the minors, but I'd had, you married and have kids, and you think, okay, if I'm going to be shipped up and down, I don't know if I really want to do this. So I had resigned to the fact that I was going to retire, and was talked into it by my agent to go in on a tryout with the New York Islanders. And, I hesitated on it. And it was actually my wife that said, she said, you'll never know unless you just go and try, and just so happened to make the team. So, and I think I was at 936 games, and I was quite content with that. So, it is a great accomplishment, for me to look back on, but it wasn't really a goal that I set out and had in mind. I wanted to be a contributing factor to a team. And, that Islanders team had some young players with the Tavarises and Kyle Okpozos at the time. And, so I was there more as a mentor. I think the heart and mind wanted to do it, but the engine wasn't running quite as good, but in that year. But it was a great year, and proud of the accomplishment.
Well, see, because you get to that one game over 1,000, and we have that in Sens history as well, where Chris Phillips has the all-time games played record by one game over Alfie, and he famously said, "Hey, he's got every other record. I figured I could have one." So that was never on your mind, eh?
It really wasn't. It really wasn't. It was on my agent's mind. I think he recognized that it would be something good to look back on, and he still felt that I had some gas in the tank. So. No, I'm glad I got talked into to making that decision, and hopefully as a mentor at that time had an influence on those young players.
Where's the silver stick right now?
It's in my office.
Nice.
But it's not, but it's on the ground. I didn't even hang it up.
Hey, those are expensive. We looked into getting one when we got to 1,000 episodes, and we're like, oh no, we're good, thanks. Hope you're enjoying our chat with Steve. We'll get right back to it. But first, Pilsy's got a word from one of our favorite sponsors.
This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you think your team is driving offensively, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Make sure you got your future bets on the Ottawa Senators.
I got a future bet.
Oh, let's hear it. Tell the people.
It's a way of saying go Sens go, but also like I'm going to kind of hedge a little bit. You can bet the country of the winning team plus 290 that a Canadian team wins the cup. So Sens, but also Oilers kind of in the mix there.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I like that. It's about time the Stanley Cup was back in its rightful place north of the American border. So if you're confident in that, like Ross is, go to FanDuel right now. FanDuel.com. Check it out today.
All right, now here's more with Steve Staios.
Speaking of the future, though, 7th overall pick, Carter Yakemchuk. I mean, he's certainly impressed fans so far in this preseason. But I'm curious, Steve, how do you weigh the decision of doing what's best for the team's immediate success, but also what's best for a young defenseman's development? I mean, you are a defenseman yourself.
Well, he's certainly has us talking about it. His performance at camp and the way he's gone about his business and handled themselves. And, it is the preseason, mind you, and things are continually ramping up, but he continues to prove that he can compete at this level right now. It's a long discussion, and we'll give him some more time. We'll take all the time afforded to us to be able to make that decision. But, in constant dialogue with the coaching staff on watching him progress and him develop, and we're throwing more situations at him that he's able to grasp. So been quite impressed. I guess we knew we had a good player when we picked him. You can guess, but you got to watch it play out and put these players in these situations and see how they react to it. So we've been pleased with his progression. He's really, his personality is a sort of a shy and quiet kid. And then when he goes on the ice, he plays a bold game and he plays with a lot of confidence. And, we've been very pleased.
2 game-winning goals for Carter Yakemchuk so far in the preseason. And when you look at kind of his situational deployment, you mentioned he's been all over the place. Is there an aspect of the decision where it's like, okay, long-term, we expect or want him to be a top 4 defenseman, top pairing defenseman. If he's going to be on the third pair, maybe it's best to send him back at that point. Or if he's one of the 6 best, but let's say he's number 6 or the third on the right side, then it's still beneficial for him to play 12 or 14 minutes and get a few games.
Yeah, I think time will tell. These are the conversations that we're having internally with regards to Carter. And, we still have some preseason time left, and we'll put him in these situations. You never want to rush these players along, but at the same time, if he's proven that he can compete and add to our group like he has, we'll continue to look at it. I mean, going back to junior hockey or World Juniors, all these things are good experiences, and you try and map it out for them. At the end of the day, Carter will let us know by his play on where he'll end up and how we go about it. But in the meantime, we're watching his progression. We're watching a fine young prospect continue to get better. And I think this experience, however it ends up this year, is going to be good for him.
Fans are super excited about it. And it brings me to my next question. You kind of touched on it there with your collaboration with Travis Green on a young player's development, but how many people are sitting at the table when you're discussing what the final roster is going to look like? Because we know over the course of the year that you've been here, you've added Dave Poulin. You obviously have Ryan Bonus, who's a great sounding board as well. Sean Tierney was added. And I'm just curious, how many voices does it take to pick who's going to make this final roster or who's made the cuts so far?
Well, it's a collaborative approach, and we meet, multiple times a day, and sometimes impromptu on things that we think of. But we're all in here, grinding away, looking at the best solutions to make our team better. I mean, we're urgent in our approach and patient in our result. We don't want to, going back to your question about adding to this team or evaluating it and timing of it all. I think we don't want to rush these things. We want to make sure that we're looking at every fine detail. But to answer your question, it's a collaborative approach, and we want to make sure the coaching staff is comfortable with players in certain situations, and then you get into the depths of making these types of decisions. I mean, it's we'll go through it so in depth that we're looking at situational players and who's on the penalty kill and who's going out in certain situations. So it's in depth, it's collaborative. There's times where we meet as a management staff, and the coaches meet on their own, and then we'll bring it all together.
Now, you already referenced how big of an offseason it was, lots of movement, but one of the biggest moves you made this offseason, it happened moments before puck drop, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, acquiring Linus Ullmark. How long had you been working on that deal to bring Ullmark to Ottawa?
Well, I was inquiring at the deadline. I think there seemed to be some good dialogue, actually very good dialogue at that time as well. And all these deals take on a life of their own, and timing was such that it, we didn't get a deal done, but we agreed to revisit it in the off season. So it was getting very hard to find situations and times where you can get a goaltender of Linus's caliber, and so we stayed on that one. I think that the timing of that I wasn't fond of, as far as it being on, the day of Game 7. Ended up kind of being right at warm up at Game 7, but there is a long story behind it. We were traveling as a group to Vegas for the draft on that Monday morning, and so really close on the deal that morning. Didn't happen. Then there's a long flight, and then by the time you get set up at the hotel and set up the trade call, it just so happened that it was that close to puck drop. But when you have a deal, both parties were content with the deal, and you want to move forward with it. You don't want it to linger. So
yep.
There's the backstory to the timing of that deal.
We appreciate that. And we also know that he's a veteran player. You brought in Michael Amadio, David Perron, Nick Cousins, guys who have been around the league. But another consistency that they all have is they're all coming from programs where playoffs are the expectation every year. Was it important to target veterans in those types of situations?
Yes, most definitely. It was one of our 3 key items that we were looking at, is not only veteran players, but ones who have been around winning programs, winning Stanley Cups, going on long playoff runs, and dealing with situations that our group hasn't yet. And as much as Travis or Alfie can sit down with these players and tell them what it's like to play in those situations, when you look across the room, you look at David Perron and Nick Cousins and Michael Amadio, they've experienced it as a player. And you can look across the room, and when you're on the bus or at the hotel, they're sharing those stories. And the hope is that it's these veteran players are hard to find, because everybody wants to wrap their players around these types of players and with that type of experience. So now we're pleased to be able to have those grizzled vets around that have been through these situations that can help our guys along.
And one of those guys they're going to help along, we know the guy who wears the C. We had him on the show this summer, Brady Tkachuk. He just kind of breathes the enthusiasm of the game. You can sense it just having a brief conversation. what is going to be the next evolution for him? What would you like to see him really bring to the table this season?
Well, I mean, he brings it every night. Brady does. So just more of what he's all about. Now having the support around him to be able to support him with his competitiveness. Like all these players we brought in are extremely competitive players. And I'd say the same for all of our group. Like the core of this group is still relatively young. But I've talked about internal growth a lot, and I think that's what excites me the most. And with all of our players, you know, you can go down the list with Tim and Drake and Shane and Josh, and they all have more to give. Now, it's not because they're not well intended; it's just they haven't had the experience. So I'm really looking forward to that, and wrapping the veteran players around them allows them to go and add to their game.
Yeah, you certainly added veteran players on the ice, but you also added a lot of veteran experience on the bench as well. And there's one guy I want to key in on specifically, Daniel Alfredsson. Just talk about how the transition went for Alfie. We always joke on this show, Daniel Alfredsson was the Daniel Alfredsson of the Ottawa Senators. He didn't really have a title, and then he slowly worked into being with the players, then coaching a little, and now this season he's a full-on assistant coach. Like, how did that whole process come together where he knew it was a right spot for him, and mutually the Ottawa Senators also knew that was the right spot for him?
Well, when I first met with Alfie, my question to him was, and because of the timing of when I joined the organization, you know, the season had already gotten started. My question to Alfie was, where do you think you can help the Ottawa Senators the most, just for 1 year, you know, just to get this started? And he said to be around the coaches and the players. You know, selfishly, I was hoping he would want to be in the management side of things, and you know, because he's got such a great hockey mind, but he's got a passion for it. And you know, as things evolved, he was in and around the original coaching staff here, and you know, made some changes, and then you know, he caught the coaching bug, and it's he's really working at his craft as a coach, and what he adds to our staff is incredible. So you know, and then going into the head coaching search and hiring Travis Green, and then getting them to build their relationship. And I'm really happy with the depth of this coaching staff. And certainly Alfie brings a really unique perspective as always. He sees the game a little bit different. He's not a career coach, which is unique because he can see things a little bit different, but he can also learn from the career coaches on some of the nuances of coaching as well. So he's been outstanding for us.
Well, he just edged you out for the Calder Trophy. You guys had the same rookie year back in 95, 96. Do you have any memories of playing against Alfie back in the day?
I can't even remember my first year, to be quite honest. Yeah, no, I was not in that category. Did I remember playing against? Yeah, of course. I mean, we didn't cross paths a lot. I mean, I spent most of my career out west. But I would rather play against faster, bigger guys that weren't as smart as guys like Daniel Alfredsson, because they were always the most challenging players to play against, because they'd always get lost in traffic and pop out, and they just always seem to have the puck on their stick. You know, there's some players like that they're frustrating to play against. You think you can go out and try and get a hit on them, but they're always just far enough away and in the open space where you couldn't. But no, he's one of the great players in our league history for a reason.
Yeah, it's awesome. Especially, 6th round pick. It wasn't like he was always that highly touted guy. It was hard work and dedication. And that almost feels like it would translate perfectly to the role he's in now, because he can, preach that work ethic that can get you so far. Now, final question for me, Steve. Really appreciate your time. A lot of Sens fans for years always felt like the organization was a bit behind when it came to analytics. I mentioned earlier you hired Sean Tierney. I'm just curious how you use him the most. What do you like to see for the data when it comes to your decision making?
Well, I hired Sean Tierney. I guess it's probably almost 10 years ago now in junior hockey. So I've known Sean for a long time. I use him for just about everything, really. I mean, including, and I did make mention of it, including our coaching search. You can. We're data informed, not data driven. I know Sean. Sean, I don't know if he loves that so much, but no, I'm kidding. He gets it. He gets me. He gets the way I like to manage. But I still think there's a feel for it, and eye test for it. But the data certainly backs up everything that we do here.
Yeah, it's about combining the eye test and the data and coming to your own conclusions. A final question for me here, Steve, is we know you and Michael Andlauer have obviously had a long history, but what is it about Michael Andlauer that has allowed you two to work so well together in the past and currently?
Well, we're aligned in our values, and we're aligned in the environment that we want to create. Around our hockey team. He does it in his business world as well. And, Mike talks about hard work and caring, and, we're aligned that way. Our personalities match. And we do care for our people. We care for our players and our staff, and we want to create an environment, and we're extremely competitive, obviously. So it's, we're trying to differentiate ourselves in certain ways. And, we've always been aligned in our core values, and he's a great leader. He's a great man, and he's demanding, on me, and he's demanding in the right way. And so we're striving for greatness here. We want to make this into a real special organization. I think the players are starting to feel it as well. To me, I guess, until I joined the Ottawa Senators, I didn't know. I thought I knew a little bit about the Ottawa-Gatineau community. I thought I knew a little bit about the market, but I would say that it's probably the most underrated place in the National Hockey League. And I say that, in all honesty. You get the juice of playing in a Canadian market and an incredible community like Ottawa-Gatineau. I think it's the best of both worlds.
Well said, Steve. You're preaching the choir here. We don't even think it's just underrated in the NHL. I think it's just underrated, period, in terms of quality in life and everything that goes on in our nation's capital. We're excited to see what goes on the ice this season, Steve, and can't thank you enough for joining us. I think our fans would kill us if we didn't ask, though. Are Timmy, Brady, and Shabby going to be okay?
They're all okay, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck this season, and hopefully we can do this again down the road.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
All right, Pilsy. First things first, stick taps to Steve Staios for joining us. That was a really insightful conversation, and thanks to Ian Mendez for the assist. Pilsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
No, I mean, we covered pretty much all of it in that first segment. Definitely really great performances from Yakemchuk, Allmark. Other than that, I don't have too many shout-outs apart from all the Gong Show physicality.
I'll give a shout out. Adam Gaudette has officially been put on our radar.
Yeah, that was a nice goal.
You can see why he sniped 44 last year. The hockey god. Man, this fourth line center position, to me, it's an arms race between Jan Yannick, Zach Ostapchuk, Adam Gaudette, and it's going to be really exciting to see which direction they want to go, because I'd forgotten. Adam Gaudette even got in a fight in his first preseason game with Toronto, so he's throwing his weight around too, whereas you think of him as a more offensive-minded bottom six player. So I think this is going to be a fantastic run to the finish line, and hopefully a healthy run to the finish line of the preseason. 2 games left. They are against Detroit, in Detroit on Friday, and then they are at home to the Montreal Canadiens on Saturday. The real thing gets underway in 8 days, though, Pilsy. 8 days. We are almost there. There are still 18 seats left on the GLEBE Central Pub Shuttle, so make sure you get your tickets before it's too late. That's 18 out of 92 seats. So come, let's get into the action at the GCP, where the vibes are free, and I cannot wait to be pilgrimaging it to the CTC.
The bus is the best, especially like if you're coming from out of town. Then you don't have to deal with Ubers. You get in the mix with a bunch of other Sens fans, or especially if you're going to the game solo. Why not hang out with a bunch of other Sens fans? You got your ride too in there. You got your meal. You got your drinks figured out at the GCP. Cannot recommend it enough. We'll be there.
Speaking of which, we will have a Sens Central citizen tomorrow. Claire Hanna on Friday. It's a packed week as we get closer and closer to the regular season. For today, we say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and engaging with the show, whether it's here or on social media at Sens Central on Twitter. And please, those 5-star reviews on Apple, they go a long way to helping the show grow. That's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.